Welcome to 2819. This is the show where we aim to inspire you to go and make disciples of all nations. I'm Sandra Dimes.
And I'm Krista Bontrager, and this is the television outreach of Reasons to Believe, a viewer-supported ministry where science and faith converge.
And we hope that as you're watching, you'll really be encouraged to just step out and share your faith with confidence and compassion.
And as you're watching the show today, be sure to get connected with us on social media. You'll find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all at 2819 Show. We'd love to hear from you.
And if you haven't heard already, there's a podcast version of 2819. It's now available on Apple Podcasts and also Google Play. So if you're tired of seeing these mugs, or if you just want to listen on the go, you can catch episodes of our show, plus other RTB podcasts. So just search for Reasons to Believe podcasts on Apple Podcasts or on Google Play.
Okay, let's kick things off here with a quick rundown of what we're doing on today's show. And in our Nexus segment, we're going to hear a clip from Truth Matters. They recently interviewed our friend Ken Samples about Christianity's finest thinkers.
I have a good guess who that might be. We'll have to see. And then in RTB 101, Krista, you're going to be talking with Jeff about a hot topic, pun intended, is global warming real?
Really want to get to the bottom of whether or not I need to buy some new light bulbs. That's what I'm going to be doing. Then in our Give and Take segment, Jeff is going to be talking with our scholar team about Earth Day topics and how that connects to the whole science-faith conversation.
And in our RTB News segment, our very funny friend Monica Jones will talk with Hugh Ross about a special giveaway, aka free books. Don't you just love those two words together?
I love them when they're together.
Yes, free and books.
That's right. Oh, yes. And first up is the Culture Talk segment. Actually, it's one of my favorite segments of the show. Sandra's going to be talking to Hugh about a Christian view of Earth Day. Very important and timely topic. Let's check that out.
Welcome to Culture Talk. This is the segment where we talk about culturally relevant topics, everything from books, films, and television to things that you're going to encounter in everyday conversations. And our hope is to help encourage you to step into those conversations and have something to talk about. So our guest today is Dr. Hugh Ross. Hugh, we're going to be talking about Earth Day. It's a holiday that you're plenty familiar with. You've written a lot about this topic. Now, it began almost 50 years ago to really help people become more aware of our carbon footprint and to help protect our environment a little bit. But from a Christian perspective, we might sometimes view this holiday as worshiping the creation versus worshiping the Creator. So how can we have a Christian view of this holiday?
Well, go back to the oldest book of the Bible, the book of Job. 3 chapters there, chapters 37, 38, and 39, are a creation care manual. God gave us this planet, and He says, I want you to occupy it till I come. Manage it in the condition I gave it to you. So we, of all people, should be ones trying to steward the environment. We also need to do it from a biblical perspective, realizing that God has stopped intervening, He's stopped creating, and the universe is subject to a law of decay. And so we need to be careful not to try to so overdo protecting the environment that we actually make it worse than otherwise it would be. Maintain it in the condition God gave it to us in the context of the laws of physics that He created.
So laws of physics, it's interesting that that would come up as a topic when we're thinking of it from a Christian perspective, but it is helpful. And when we think about creation and we think about the earth, what are some fine-tuned evidences that you see that point to a biblical creator and can help us really appreciate and have gratitude for the home that He's created for us?
In the creation Psalm 104 talks about how God packs our planet with as much life as possible, as diverse as possible. And one thing we've learned is that the number of species on planet Earth have been going up since the origin of life, hit a maximum when God created us human beings. And it's human abuse that's causing that number of species to go down and realize, you know what, God gave us all these plants and animals and we need to protect them and use them for our benefit and their benefit. But realize there is a natural extinction rate. When you try to go beyond protecting the environment, beyond the natural extinction rate, you actually raise the extinction rate. So again, take biblical wisdom to bear in managing the planet.
So you mentioned something about just protecting animals and taking good care of them, and that's such an important topic and an important point, because sometimes people who really love the environment and they're doing their best to reduce their carbon footprint, they're not really feeling like Christians are stepping into that and willing to even acknowledge that humans do play a part in the damage that we're seeing here on Earth. So if I had a friend like that who was really, environmentally conscious and trying to be careful with what they consume and how they leave the planet, how can I step into a conversation with her and show that Christians ought to at least be joining them in these causes?
God created all these species to help us and to serve and please us. So when we get rid of 1 or 2 or 1,000 of them, we're doing ourselves a disservice. God created them for us. Mm-hmm. We need to see why He created them, how they can serve us and please us, and actually take advantage of what God has given us and protect them because it's a gift that God has given us.
So what would be like a practical thing that we can do, whether it's protecting animals or cleaning up the beach or something? What would be some practical tips that you would recommend that we can step into?
Well, for example, be careful with how you design your cities, mm-hmm. Because it could do damage to the environment. It could do damage to yourself. Typically, when you do harm to the plants and animals, you're also harming yourself. So it's even if you take a selfish perspective, it's to our own benefit to take care of these plants and animals.
Yeah, that's a good reminder. So thank you so much. Is there anything you want to add with regard to Earth Day?
Well, everything we see on the earth is there for a purpose. None of it is extraneous. None of it is wasted. And it's especially there to help us human beings to fulfill our purpose. We're not going to be able to fulfill our purpose to the degree God wants us to if we don't take advantage and protect all the resources He's given us.
Well, thank you very much for that, Hugh. And if you'd like to hear more from Dr. Hugh Ross, visit reasons.org and search 10 ways to thank God on Earth Day. Now we're going to check out a clip from our friends over at Ratio Christi on their Truth Matters program. They talk with Ken Samples and they ask him who his favorite Christian thinker is. Let's check it out.
The other individual, Augustine of Hippo, or St. Augustine, dates 354 to 430. Tony, I would argue, and more important than just my own assessment, I think there's a virtual consensus that St. Augustine may be the most influential Christian outside of the Bible. His influence is really enormous. Catholics, of course, honor him deeply, but so do Protestants. I'll give you an example of that. John Calvin, the great biblical scholar of the Reformation era, Calvin quotes Thomas Aquinas 100 times, approximately, another 100 times from Martin Luther. He quotes Augustine 4,200 times. And again, the idea as a Protestant, he wanted to make the case that the best in Catholic scholarship, in his mind, Augustine was on his side on many important ideas. Augustine is known for many things, battling the Pelagian heresy. Pelagius was a British monk who said people are born good. Sin is not so much part of our nature. Sin is just a matter of having bad habits and bad role modeling, and you could be saved without the grace of God intervening in your life. Well, Augustine responded and said, we possess a sinful nature that we have received, passed on from Adam. Augustine battled many other heretical perspectives, but I would say maybe his most influential areas in the books that he wrote, his book, The Confessions, Tony, is it really begins the whole genre of literature called the autobiography. And this book talks about his extraordinary life, his great conversion. Confessions really is understood in the triple sense. It is his confession of faith, but also his confession of his own sinfulness and a confession to the glory of God. There was a study done a number of years ago by evangelical scholars, and outside of Scripture, Augustine's Confession was voted the most influential Christian book in history. He also wrote other books, The City of God, which is an extraordinary critique of the Greco-Roman philosophy and a presentation of the history of of the Christian faith, a philosophy of history, if you will. And he also wrote an extraordinary book on the Trinity called On the Trinity.
And once again, we want to thank our friends at Ratio Christi for having Ken Samples on their program. And if you'd like to catch more episodes of the Truth Matters show, just go on YouTube and look for Ratio Christi. And now it's time for RTV 101. This is the segment where we talk about practical questions to help equip you to share your faith with friends and family more effectively. And I'm here once again with my colleague and astrophysicist, Dr. Jeff Zweerink. Welcome back, Jeff.
Hi, Krista. It's good to be here as always.
It's Earth Day, so I thought it would be a good time to talk about the question about global warming. I know many of my Christian friends feel very conflicted about it. Is global warming real, or is this sort of a government conspiracy to make me buy $10 light bulbs? So help me understand what's happening here.
No, that's, it's really good. And this is actually one of those topics as a Christian I actually kind of enjoy talking about, because without getting into all the details of whether the globe's warming or what we do, it's really a great opportunity to just bring Christian principles into the idea, because God really has put us on this planet and given us charge of it. So it is something we can be excited about.
Yeah. Now, I know one of the points that you've made I found very helpful is when we think about global warming, often our first kind of gut reaction is to go with whatever our political views are.
Yes.
And there's a tendency to take sides based on our political views on other issues.
My experience has been, and I've done a few little odd experiments to verify this, is that most people, even within the church, think about this politically, not theologically. And so that's kind of one of the things I like to do, is just whether you're on the global warming is the worst thing to happen to the planet or global warming is a hoax, let's look at theologically how should we think about this, because there's a lot of good Christian ideas that come into play.
Well, let's talk about that. Help us to think about this question from a Christian point of view.
Well, I think from a Christian, I find two things that play into this deeply. One is that we see that God has designed the planet and put it here. And so the idea that we're somehow able to destroy the planet without really thinking about it is a little bit arrogant on our part. On the other hand, God's command to Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden was to be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and rule over and subdue it. So he also gave us charge of it. So to say that we're going to destroy the planet is a little arrogant, but to not take care of it is also violating the command that God gave us. And so that's where, as a Christian, we have a really good balance that we bring to this discussion.
So scientifically, I know you've thought about this. Help us know, is the planet actually getting warmer? That's really a big question.
Yes, it is. And, you can talk about the details and, or the curves and there's all sorts of little things that people will poke at it. We can't trust it. But really, the scientific data is very conclusive that over the last 150 years, the globe really has gotten warmer and humanity has been a part of that warming. And so those two things, I think the science is pretty well settled on.
Okay. So humanity is having an impact
yes.
on the planet and its temperature, and that it is getting warmer. You feel like that's pretty solidly
yes.
established?
Now, I will say this. If you take a position that humanity is entirely uninvolved, that's indefensible as a scientific position. But if you have the position that humanity is entirely responsible, that's also indefensible. So it's a pretty complicated topic. But yes, the globe is getting warmer, and two, humanity's involved. So we need to think carefully and seriously about what that means.
So it is established that before humans came, before the Industrial Revolution, the planet did have ebbs and flows of temperature.
Yes.
But now there is also this body of evidence that we are impacting it. We are accelerating it in some way.
Yeah, and that's the hard part, is that when you look at how the range of what it's done, humanity's still very much within, or humanity's contribution is still relatively small compared to the range that it's seen, but the fact that it's happened so rapidly is what kind of gives a little bit of concern, and kind of a step back and say, okay, as humanity, we need to think about how we're doing this to make sure we're not going to cause damage that we could really prevent.
So going back to a scriptural perspective on creation care, we've been put in charge of stewarding this home. What do you think Christians ought to do?
Well, so this is what I think is important we do, is that very often if you're on the liberal end of the political spectrum, this is awful, we've got to do everything we can to solve it. And typically those solutions can often be detrimental to humanity. If you're on the conservative end of the spectrum, you tend to think, oh, this is a hoax, we don't have to do anything. And so what I think as Christians we ought to do is recognize, yes, whether we're liberal or conservative, global warming is something that's going on. Let's make sure we understand it, and let's put solutions out there, and particularly be looking for the solutions that take care of the planet and humanity, because if God has designed things, as I'm convinced He has, those solutions are going to be the one that are really the best, that take care of the planet and humanity as well.
I think from a theological perspective, honestly, if Christians had been paying attention to our theology, maybe we would have invented Earth Day.
You know, maybe that is the case. You know, God's given us charge. I think we ought to take that seriously.
That's right. Thanks, Jeff. And I want to encourage you to check out Jeff's blog at the reasons.org website. You can look for impact events. Now Jeff's going to run over to the couches and talk to the scholars as we continue our Earth Day conversation.
Hello, Jeff Zweerink again here with Give and Take, where we equip you with the latest scientific evidence so you can be confident in sharing your faith. Today I'm joined by my colleague Ken Samples, and we're going to look at the topic of Earth Day and creation care. Ken, it's good to have you here today.
Thank you.
So it's Earth Day, celebrating that, and that's something as Christians I've found that we struggle with. I know I personally struggle with. How do we think about Earth Day? Is this a good thing, a bad thing? Are we worshiping the earth? Should we take care of it? So I'm just curious, what are your thoughts? How as a Christian do we think well about Earth Day?
Well, I think first of all, Earth is a very special place. It's our home. It's the place by which redemption plays itself out. So the earth is special. Environmentalism, on the other hand, can sometimes take some pretty extreme positions that I think lots of Christians would feel uncomfortable with. So recognizing the beauty, the elegance, the importance of earth is different than necessarily drawing viewpoints about the environment that may be tad on the extreme.
Well, so it does, I mean, you kind of mentioned environmentalism or creation care, and it seems like that can fairly easily roll over into worshiping the creation, if you will. But it does seem like there's some biblical basis for caring for the creation. Let's kind of flesh that out. Where do we start there?
Yeah, well, I think we begin, of course, in the book of Genesis, that Adam and Eve are created by God. They are stewards. They have a role of living out on planet Earth, multiplying. They also are to care for the earth. And so I think a stewardship role is a very important one. I don't think we should take, being fruitful and multiply to mean that we act irresponsible. The earth has limited resources. We're to care for them. We're to use them wisely and appropriately.
So let's just kind of dig into that a little bit, because there's almost this sense that I see in the way people talk, and I see this in the church and outside the church, that almost that if we don't take care of the planet, that almost by accident we can destroy it. Is that a biblical way, or is that the right way to look at it?
Well, I certainly think that God's sovereignty and human responsibility are compatible ideas. We are to be responsible agents. On the other hand, God is in control of the world that He created. I don't see the planet being destroyed by human beings per se. That doesn't mean, though, that we shouldn't be very cautious about nuclear weapons and all of those types of things. But I think we need to realize that God has a plan for us, for planet Earth, and for His kingdom.
So that does seem to kind of be a check there on Christian thinking, that we've got this command to go care for creation, and I'd like to kind of flesh out just what does that mean? What does that actually look like in day-to-day practice in some sense, that we're supposed to care for it, but we're also not supposed to worship it, if you will, that God's got His plan and purpose, so we can't just ignore and trash it, but we also, God gives us a command to care for it. So what does it look like day-to-day, or how do we balance those two as we live out that command?
Well, I think as human beings made in God's image, if we move away from God, there's often a tendency to worship something, to become idolaters, if you will. I think that's why the Old Testament is so clear that God is the only being that deserves worship. And nature is beautiful, it's elegant, it is necessary for our existence, but God is the only person, or entity that is to be worshipped. I think in terms of caring for the planet, I think it means being responsible about the use of resources on this planet. I think it does reflect on things like pollution. I think it relates to other ways in which we are to share resources. Jeff, I think a lot of times natural evil is really evil that's perpetrated by creatures, because there is not this caring for resources, this sharing, if you will. So I would see it more in those particular areas, hopefully in more of a safe and sane approach to a Christian worldview.
Now, I know you've also developed, you have another idea that of why caring for the earth and things like Earth Day would be important. And that's really kind of central to what Christianity is about. Kind of bring that out and share that with us.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I would say that if there is one central Christian teaching, it is the doctrine of the incarnation. Catholics, Protestants, Orthodox, all branches of Christendom affirm it, that Jesus was the second person of the Trinity who took a human nature and became man. So he is the God-man. And this means that God has visited this planet. This is the place that he came. You know, this is the platform, if you will, for redemption being played out. And I think that means that not only is humanity have special dignity, that God would take our flesh, he would take our nature, but I think it also affirms the importance and the value of this planet, that God walked the earth. I'm sure it's a great thing for somebody to walk on the moon. It may be a greater thing for God to walk on the earth.
You know, that's a remarkable point. You know, I just kind of, you know, I've talked with my folks. They visited the Holy Land, people that have visited the Holy Land.
Yeah.
There's a reverence that comes with seeing, hey, this is where Jesus walked. This is where Paul preached. In some sense, that seems to be what you're advocating here, is that Christ came and lived on this planet. Just by being here, we're where he lived. That's a remarkable thing as well.
Yeah, this is the planet that Jesus walked on. You know, he saw the same natural phenomena that you and I do. He drank water, he ate food. I think we can see this earth as our home and as a place that God has come to. And that shows kind of a special Christian significance for earth and for the creator of earth, which is the triune God.
Is there anything special about God inviting us into his plan, that he did give us charge or stewardship of creation? Why did he do that? Why didn't he just give us this place that we didn't have to really take care of?
That's a good question. The way I think about that, Jeff, is I think we're part of the created order. And it really puts us in a context where we live in this world, and the way we treat this world reflects on our ability to thrive. And so I think there is a close connection so that we can supervise, we can oversee nature, and I think in many respects it reflects the image of God. We're representing God by our actions on this planet.
You know, we're talking about Earth Day, and as Christians, it's easy to get a little bit defensive, maybe a little worried, should we be involved with this? But this is really something that God kind of almost advocates for Earth Day when he gives us charge over creation to steward it well. And it gives us an opportunity to provide common ground with others around who do really want to take care of this planet. And as followers of Christ who came on this planet and walked and lived among us, that should make us excited about not only taking care of this planet, but going out and sharing his love with others. So let's go do that. Now let's head over to Monica. She's talking with Hugh Ross about an exciting book giveaway to help you share Jesus as creator with your unsafe friends and family.
Hi, I'm Monica Jones. Earth Day is coming up, and who better to talk to about the planet than Dr. Hugh Ross, president and founder of Reasons to Believe. All right, so Hugh, Reasons to Believe for Earth Day is giving away a copy of Improbable Planet. And there's tons of stuff in here, things that I didn't even know. But so liquid water is not the only requirement for life. Explain that to me.
Yeah, in chapter 7 of the book, I talk about how there are 9 different habitable zones. All the focus is on whether or not there's liquid water possibly existing on a planet. But hey, if you don't happen to be in the ultraviolet habitable zone, in addition to liquid water habitable zone, the planet's not habitable. And only 3% of stars have the possibility of having a planet in both zones. Matter of fact, of all the thousands of planets that we've discovered, there's only one that simultaneously resides in all 9 habitable zones. 3 guesses which one, and the first 2 don't count.
Really, Hugh? I don't know. You tell me.
Well, the one you're sitting on, Monica.
This is so good. Pop quiz with Hugh. I failed. What else is in the book, Hugh?
Well, the book basically makes the point that no matter what component of Earth you look at, no matter what life form you look at throughout its entire history, all of it plays a role in making possible the existence of billions of us human beings living here at one time with the civilization and technology that we need to take the good news of salvation to all the people groups of the world.
So it does point that God created Earth just for us.
And nothing is wasted, nothing is superlative, nothing is extraneous. It all has to be very carefully fine-tuned. So in terms of Earth Day, everything you see on the Earth, all of its life, all of its history, all of its components, its dirt, its air, every bit of it has to be exactly the way it is in order for us to have this conversation.
That's awesome. Thank you, Hugh. I love having you on. So starting April 22nd, Earth Day, if you would like a copy of Hugh's book, Improbable Planet, and maybe answer those questions he was asking me, see how God created Earth for you by going to reasons.org/earthdaygift. Act fast because it's only for a limited time and as many as we have. So thank you for watching. And once again, we hope you'll take advantage of our free giveaway of Dr. Ross's new classic, Improbable Planet. Now, this is a very limited time offer, so you'll want to act quickly on that.
And you know, we know that it can be really hard to share your faith. It can be intimidating these days. So we hope that you've taken something from this show and you can use that to have a kind and loving conversation with someone who doesn't know Jesus.
Especially about themes related to Earth Day.
Yeah.
We covered a lot. We hope you'll take some nugget of that and begin to share that with somebody that the Lord has strategically and supernaturally placed in your life.
And this show was made possible through the faithful support of Reasons to Believe donors. So if you feel led to support resources like this, please visit reasons.org/2819.
Until next time, check us out on the web at reasons.org. So many great blog posts, videos, other resources to help continue the conversation, even on Earth Day themes.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff there.
And you'll find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We're at 2819 Show. We know we have some viewers kind of all around the globe. Some people in Porterville, California, Tulsa, Oklahoma, and as far away as Australia. That's super cool. So let us know where you're watching.
We'll see you next week.